Hello everyone! Welcome to the first video of the post-game of my Dragon Quest VI 100% walkthrough. Today, we are going to do most of the grinding for the post-game boss named Nocturnus. Joining me today is Skyzo. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and it's been a while since I've recorded. Hello, you two.
Has it been a while? I thought you were with me for the epilogue.
Well, it's been like about a week, right? Since we last did this, I think.
I thought it was 3 to 4 days.
Oh, well, felt like a lot longer.
I could always check if I'm curious. Anyways, we've got some scrolls of Draconic Diligence lying around, so we want to turn Carver into a dragon. We want to make Nevan here a monster tamer, because we're finally going to be recruiting our monster buddies. They're going to be super important for Nocturnus. And Rex is also going to become a goof-off or a Gadabout. He's going to be going down the Luminary vocation line, because that's the quickest way to getting the hero class. Now, the interesting thing about the hero class is that everyone else needs to master just about every tier 2 vocation in order to just even get there, but Rex, the hero of the game, only needs to master one tier 2 vocation, so he's the guy we want to make the hero class. And we're running out of party space, so we want to leave behind Millie and Amos so we can make room for Healie and Goowain. So that's how we're preparing.
Okay. I wonder how the system for catching monsters works.
It's fairly simple. What you do is you just have a monster tamer in your party, just one. Having more monster tamers will not increase your odds of catching a monster. And if there are multiple recruitable monsters, the game will choose the one you most recently slew. So you gotta be careful about that if you run into such a situation. And part of what we're doing is we're putting the Sunderbolt Blade on Rex. That way he can use the sap spell for free. Now that one did not have Healie, so we ran from that one. Run from this one. Aha! There's a potential Healie recruit. Now let's see. These guys have a 1 in 16 chance of being recruited, so let's see how lucky we get.
Really? That seems pretty low.
Yeah, but we got really lucky there. That was actually incredibly lucky, and yes, that is low. Fortunately, Goowain makes up for that good luck a little bit by... He takes 8 fights to get, despite being a 1 in 4 chance. But anyway, Healie we want to make an Armamentalist, because when you master that, you learn Kafrizzle. That's a spell that does like 180 to 190 damage. And there's going to be an item later on that lets you cast the same spell twice. So that's about 360 to 380 damage in a single round.
So something that I wanted to point out is that the odds on 1 in 16 is like about a 5% chance, like a 6.25%. That's very low.
It is very low, isn't it?
Yep.
This guy I probably could have gotten in the Spiegel episode, so I regret not doing it then. We would have gotten some extra levels for him, which would have helped out a teensy bit later, but it's not that big of a deal.
I actually remember you mentioning the monster that you talked about, the slime guy with the knight riding the slime, right? That's the one.
Right. That'd be him.
Yeah, I remember you talking about him.
Now, if you're playing with the remakes, of course, that's not a problem to begin with, because in the remakes, you just recruit him by talking to him at How Castle. He just joins you because he wanted to serve the prince, but the prince was scared of him because, you know, he's a monster, so. Anyways, here's that hidden item we saw in the credits. The Liquid Metal Mind scroll, and we're gonna want to make Carver that class once he masters his dragon class, because Carver is the key to all this, as usual. And I'm not saying it ironically this time, like I did for Terry. Carver is, like, actually super good with it. Oh, and Goowain is going to be a dragon, because he's going to clear out the Slimopolis in tomorrow's episode.
Okay.
Now, I suppose I should talk about dragons. Their main thing is that... Oh, and Nevan is going to go down the Sage class line now that he's done with the monster taming gig. Sage is Mage and Priest smashed together, just as Armamentalist is Warrior and Mage smashed together. In fact, that's what most of the Tier 2 vocations are. They're just 2 Tier 1 vocations smashed together. So you master 2 Tier 1 vocations to get into 1 Tier 2 vocation, and that's how that all works.
Seems pretty good.
Yep. And now, that same place that we learned Dodgy Dance for Terry, we're going to grind here again, because the enemies here are relatively weak. And we're gonna make sure that Carver, Lizzie, and Terry are in the front lines along with Rex. Eventually, as our party members master their dragon classes a little more, we'll want to put Rex out of the party, because he's the only PC that cannot be AI controlled, which means extra button inputs, which is something we want to get rid of eventually. For now, though, we want his help, because we want to use the Sunderbolt Blade every turn. Also, there's the battle counter. That is how many fights we need to do before we get Rex as far into the hero class as we need him to be.
Wait, really?
Yup.
Man, I am glad that you were able to edit, like, most of these out. That's a lot of battles.
It is a lot of battles. They get a little bit faster later, because what you do with Dragon is it gets AoE attacks that cost 0 MP, and at the very top is Cold Breath, which does around, I think, 190 to 220 ice damage to everyone that doesn't resist it. So it gets super fast, but you need 270 battles just to master it all the way, so it can take a while. And Liquid Metal Mind is 300 battles to master it, so a lot of this is kind of planning around that 581 threshold that Rex needs to hit.
So, all of this planning is going to essentially just the final boss, right?
Yup.
So could you imagine, like, actually trying to fight the final boss without having this much foresight?
Not without grinding to level to 70 or something, which is what most people do.
It's gonna be a difficult battle, I'd imagine. I hope so.
Not as hard as Mortimer, but definitely harder than Murdaugh.
So you said that it would be like the second most difficult battle, so that's pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah, mostly because the Super Nintendo version forces you to grind to a certain point in your development, so relatively speaking, Nocturnus isn't as overpowered compared to you as Mortimer was, because you could fight Mortimer just as soon as you got to him, you know what I mean?
I do, and I think you mentioned that you grinded for like about 3 hours, so would you recommend that the average player does this, actually?
I would, because you literally have to. The game will just not let you into the bonus dungeon if you don't get 5 stars in every vocation. It's not really a recommendation, it's what I recommend you do while you're grinding for a 5-star hero, you know what I mean?
That's a requirement? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow, okay, that's...
The remakes, like, you can just enter the post-game dungeon right away. And if that's the case, you could probably just get away with grinding to mastering Liquid Metal Mind and just having 3 dragons. You wouldn't be likely to beat the post-game boss, but you have infinite sands of time, so you can just rewind the battle as many times as you want. So effectively, you'd only need to fight 300 battles.
Okay, so because of that, I'd imagine that the 500 battle counter is variable, right? You could fight way less than that if you're lucky. Or at least that's the way I understand it.
If you're playing the remakes, yes. Super Nintendo, you have to do this.
Okay.
Also, a few of our party members have gotten a fair bit into their dragon vocations, and as you can see, they are starting to get strong enough that they don't need Rex with his Sunderbolt Blade anymore, so that's nice.
Can I just say that I'm a big fan of the design of the monsters in this game. They're pretty good.
They are pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, I like the Jester, like enemy. That one.
He was one of the guys that came with Murdaugh, remember?
Yeah, this game reuses some assets. I do remember that.
Oh, and I should say, the reason I switched from the ocean to this location is because Terry, as you level up, you're going to want to move to progressively more advanced locations. I think for Terry, it's when he gets to level 24 or level 25 that you have to switch to grinding at Clearvale. I don't remember the exact amount. I'll put it in the description for you guys, don't worry. Speaking of Terry, he just got 5-star in Gladiator. So now that he's done that, we want to switch him to a fighter, which is a lesser vocation, but I want him to go down the Paladin class line, because he's the one who's closest to being able to do so. He's got a lot of free vocation levels, because he doesn't have quite enough time to master Dragon, but at the same time, he's already pretty advanced in Gladiator, so he's the one with an open book, if that makes sense.
It does.
Ooh, look at that damage.
That's pretty insane, actually.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
It's only gonna get better.
All these monsters are pretty much just dying in one shot.
Yup. Alright. And now that we've mastered the Dancer class for Rex, you want to do that before you do Gadabout, because the thing with Gadabout is it's kind of the game's joke class. So it's interesting. As you get further into Gadabout, you have this random chance of the character just doing nothing. Like, they'll do silly things like Ashlyn will play house, or someone will pick their nose instead of doing what they're supposed to do, or Millie will do a belly dance or something. Basically just screwing around. So you want to do Dancer first. That way when you get to Gadabout, Rex is already out of the party anyway.
Okay.
Now let's see what we're doing next. Oh, Healie mastered warrior, so now it's time for him to become a mage. And after that point, he'll get to Armamentalist. And actually, that's one of the interesting things about how I routed this, because for Healie to master Armamentalist, he needs 569 battles, which will allow him to learn Kafrizzle. So part of the reason I held off on grinding for so long was because A, I knew that Healie being a 1 in 16 recruit, he was not someone I could efficiently recruit until after I got the Sunderbolt Blade. So that's why I pushed him way later into the playthrough. And because of that, he'd have 569 levels to grind, so I avoided vocation grinding as long as possible until I got Healie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, and Ashlyn is going down the Ranger job line, which means she should master Thief, Beastmaster, and Merchant. Because we're not going to be using her at all against the final boss, so she's the one that kind of goes down the weird job class line. Unfortunately, Ranger isn't very good. Like, it's either full of useless abilities, or the ones that are useful are invalidated by other class lines. The game is kind of unbalanced that way, and it's a shame.
Well, I mean, why is it unbalanced though? Like, why is a class not good?
Well, I just told you, it's full of useless abilities, and the ones that are good are invalidated by others.
I mean, like, an example of something like that in the class.
Well, for example, its strongest attack is something called Purify, or Purify, which does around as much as what Kafrizzle does, but it has a 1 in 3 chance of failing. Whereas if you just went with Kafrizzle, you'd have a 100% chance of it working. And Ranger takes a fairly long time to master, because you have to master 3 Tier 1 vocations to get into the Tier 2, instead of just 2, like most of the other classes.
Okay, gotcha.
I think the text walkthrough goes into it in a little more detail. It's just hard speaking off the top of the head like this, but... Oh, I should also mention, the reason we went to that island, Calberona or Sorceria, is because Carver leveled to level 28, so now he's too high leveled for the guys at Clearvale. I gotta pay close attention to the game's area level caps, which I will link in the description.
And, just to be clear, you're the only one working on the text guide, right?
Yeah, just about. That text guide was kind of written by me. It may be that someone comes along and edits it one day, since, you know, Strategy Riki tells you, be prepared to have your work edited, but effectively it's my guide, so...
last I checked your text guide, it was quite massive. The amount of effort that you put into the walkthrough and the guide shows me that you're sort of a massive fan of this game. That's pretty cool.
I am. It's just so interesting to me. Like, it's a flawed game, but there's so much to it. Oh, and Pierre, he mastered Dragon, so I want him to go into Priest so he can, because Priest still has some really good spells, especially for Nocturnus and for clearing out the Slimopolis. In fact, it's kind of the class line I want everyone to go down if, you know, they've mastered everything they want to do, but there's still battles left until I've mastered Hero. Make them priests.
Interesting. From what I understand, when you master a class, you don't lose the attributes if you switch to something else, do you?
You lose some of the stat gains and debuffs, but the skills you keep.
That is quite interesting because you just have all of the skills and just use them whenever you like.
Speaking of which, we just got our strongest ice attack by mastering Dragon. So now, instead of fighting the weakest monsters we possibly can, we want to fight the strongest monsters we possibly can without losing time, because that'll get us the battles, that'll get us the great experience, and we still won't slow down at all. Except for the fact that I have to get on Peggy Sue to fly here and then go back to the dream world every time I want to change vocations, but that's a minor time loss. I think the levels you get from grinding here are worth it. For the Slimopolis and for Nocturnus, because the they're good strats, but they're not guaranteed.
Okay, so this is more consistent, is what you're saying?
Yes. Also, Terry just mastered the fighter class, so now he's gonna be a priest so he can go into Paladin later. And this here is the path you gotta take back to All Trades Abbey, which is why I'm keeping this part in. At least this once.
Interesting, okay.
Now, if you're playing the remakes, you have an upgraded zoom spell, so you just choose the switch worlds option and bam, you're right back to All Trades. Super Nintendo version, you kinda gotta go back to, you gotta take the stairs between worlds and then go back, so a little less convenient that way.
So now we are more or less reaching the end of the battles, it seems.
Yep. Also, during one of the fighting monsters segments, pay attention to the bottom of the text boxes. Like, it actually glitches a bit for some reason when you're using those ice breaths. I don't know why.
What kind of glitch is it? I guess we're gonna find out.
Check it out. It's like it's like the very bottom lines just sort of fails to update or something. So you got text overlapping with each other.
I think what happens is that, at least from what I understand, is how the text scrolls like this. You have a paragraph character. So like if you miss, as a translator, if you miss like a paragraph character, it just that happens. So there you go.
Oof. I remember I was working on a fan translation for a game called Mystic Arc, or eventually Fire Emblem Gaiden, and it's like, hex editing, man, you miss one little thing and something breaks like that. It's actually kind of stressful.
You were editing the hex code for the game? Like straight up?
With a hex editor, I gotta edit the text.
But you could see the actual text, right? As strings.
Yes.
Okay. So then how, like, what, I guess what made the text update? Was there like a flag or something?
No, I just have a hex editor and I put in the bytes, and I had the sheet that told me which bytes represented which character. So 00 would represent a capital A, or 01 would represent a capital B. And if I knew where the text banks were located, I could just adjust the values as needed. Also, I don't know why Goowain is being made a fighter here. I think it's for the added agility. It's not something I need him to master, though, so keep that in mind.
Converting your text from conventional characters to hex seems very tedious, but you probably had a tool to do that for you.
No, it was just tedious.
You didn't have a text to hexadecimal converter?
I don't believe I did. I do remember it being tedious, though, I'll tell you that much. Anyways, that's all for today's episode. Rex just mastered the Luminary vocation, so now he's a hero